Tell me why, father. Why stand with the arch-traitor?
I do not stand with Horus. I stand against the Emperor. Do you understand, Koragar? I am free now. Free.
The founding legions of the Adeptus Astartes served as the first unified examples of the Emperor's conquest of the galaxy. Each legion revered for their battle prowess and skill at arms. And whilst there are some legions who are renowned as duelists, there is only one regarded not for their finesse, but butchery. A damned legion now under the thrall of the ruinous powers that delights in the spilling of blood and screams of the dying. The 12th Legion of the Adeptus Astartes, the World Eaters. Unlike their brethren of the first foundings of Holy Terror, the 12th Legion of the Adeptus Astartes would not recruit from a specific region of the Throne World. Speculated to draft its members from only the most aggressive of potential candidates, all that can be confirmed is that the Legion's initial victories would be characterized by their savagery. Deployed during the Sa'afric Liberation during the Unification Wars, the 12th Legion would shortly after be held in reserve for the remainder of the unification of Terra and conquest of the Sol System. Whether to reduce civilian casualties of war, a need to keep reinforcements to support other legions, or to be quickly deployable should the need to quell disloyal elements within the Imperium is unknown. Their hunger for war and dedication to the Emperor unquestionable, they would be dubbed the Warhounds by the Master of Mankind. A title which the 12th Legion would bear with pride, adopting the Red Hound as their sigil in his honor. With the majority of the Space Marine legions deployed within expedition fleets during the early stages of the Great Crusade, the Warhounds would be sent to quell the insurrections at the colony rebellion of Cerberus. Sent personally by the Emperor, the Warhounds would unleash his wrath and take no prisoners in the persecution of the colony. The Imperial Army detachment sent alongside them would be shocked at their merciless butchery of the populace and report massive casualties to be incurred on both sides of the engagement. Thereafter split into independent companies, thousands of Astartes strong in number, the Warhounds would be held in reserve to assist Crusade forces and other Astartes, such as the 1st Legion, Iron Warriors, and Space Wolves, in their efforts to bring planets into compliance. Garnering a reputation as near-feral shock troopers whom would turn the tide at the bloodiest engagements, with slaughter, victorious or otherwise, the constant outcome. With the Warhound service during the Great Crusade, reports would indicate their willingness to turn on their allies, culling entire human regiments as a result of their performance in battle. Such reports would be difficult to verify due to the Legion's deliberate distancing from other Astartes legions. Consolidating their forces into the 13th Expeditionary Fleet, the Warhounds would add additional Imperial forces to their fleet at the muster world of Bot. Comprising support elements of the most questionable of forces, the Warhounds would incorporate the Legio Audax Titans, Numen gun clans, and abhuman troops of feral worlds. The conduct of such forces making them distrusted by other fleets, the War Council would intentionally group such disparate forces to fight alongside the Warhounds, with the intention to create a force content with total annihilation in mind. Dubbed the Bloody 13th, the Expeditionary Fleet would serve with infamy as the single most remorseless and dispassionate consignment of the Imperium's might. Yet such a reputation would only grow bloodier with the discovery of the 12th Legion's Primarch, Angron. The Primarch of the 12th grew on the downtrodden yet technologically proficient planet of Nuceria. Ruled by an elite class of nobles, the young Primarch would be forced to fight as a gladiator for the nobles' entertainment. Facing cyber-enhanced warriors and winning his many bouts, the nobles would attempt to surgically and cybernetically enhance the enslaved Primarch. All attempts would fail, with the exception of one: the psychosurgical brain implantation of the accursed Butcher's Nails. Enhancing the Primarch's aggression to new heights, Angron would form a fellowship of gladiators to fight at his side and revolt against their oppressors, naming them the Eaters of Cities. Vastly outnumbered, the gladiators would fail in their attempt. His doomed band of warriors escaping the gladiatorial arena and retreating to the nearby mountains, they would be surrounded by 5 armies of the nobles' forces, outnumbering them 10 to 1. Yet fate would intervene, with the Emperor of Mankind watching his son's plights and intervening in his time of need. Offering Angron the chance to lead his legion as a general of his armies, Angron would refuse the Emperor's offer, resolving to die at the side of his gladiators. However, the Emperor would deny his son's wishes and teleport him to safety prior to the assault by the nobles' armies. Angron's followers would be massacred, scarring the Primarch of the 12th forevermore. Resentment to the Emperor now entrenched within his very being, Angron would soon after be transferred to a vessel containing his gene sons, the Warhounds. Uniquely amongst the Primarchs of the Imperium, Angron's unification with his legion would be marked with violence. Enraged due to the loss of his Nucerian followers, Angron would murder all officers of the Warhounds who attempted to speak with him, including the Legion Master, Gia, with the captain of the 8th Company, Khan, being the only to survive his interaction with his Primarch. Forming a tenuous bond with his gene father, Angron would assume command of his legion with Khan's introduction. Salute the one whose soldiers were named the Eaters of Cities, with Captain Driga remarking,
Primarch, General, your warriors were Eaters of Cities, Lord, but with you to command us, the Warhounds will be the Eaters of Worlds. World Eaters. World Eaters. So shall you be then, little brothers. Come with me then, World Eaters.
Assuming command of his now renamed 12th Legion, Angron would muster his forces at the planet of Bot. Instructing his legion to incorporate his experiences as a gladiator into their battle doctrines, the Astartes would undergo duels within fighting pits. Earning their scars anew, the Terran traditions of the Legion would be erased, with any Space Marine unable to pass these new tests of metal dying in the process. The Legion would repaint their armor with the fanged Maw symbol of the World Eaters. Campaigning throughout the stars to aid in the Great Crusade, Angron would give his legion a single Nucerian day to achieve victory in any engagement he would send them to persecute. This grueling 31-hour task a test the World Eaters would be eager to achieve in order to gain favor with their Primarch. Ordering his apothecaries to construct replicas of his Butcher's Nails implant, Angron would oversee the initial implantations of the devices amongst his Astartes. Proving fatal in their initial designs, Angron would be disgusted with the weakness of his gene sons and flee from his legion for 2 years until returning at the behest of Captain Khan. Unable to meet their Primarch's deadlines, the World Eaters would be punished for not achieving compliance of their goals. Ordering each Astartes of the Legion to form into groups of 10, one within each group would be killed by the other 9 to purge the weakest of their ranks. With Angron often spiraling into frenzied rages that would cost the lives of his men, the Legion's librarians would often subdue their Primarch from his bloodlusts. With the perfection of the Butcher's Nails design by Apothecary Garland Surlak, divisions within the Legion would be formed. Centurion Mago would lead a revolt against his Primarch, yet be slain. Unified once more, the implantations of the Butcher's Nails would begin. With the first successful implantation endured by Khan, the Legion would adopt the nails almost in their entirety. With the Legion's implantation of the nails, the demands of their Primarch would swiftly be achieved. Marked by the Genna massacre, the World Eaters would murder the entire planet's population within a single night. Now synonymous with annihilation, the mere mention of the Legion's deployment would be enough to bring worlds into compliance. Yet such wanton butchery would bring the ire of the other Astartes legions, with even Primarch of the Ultramarines, Rebute Gilliman, decrying the Legion's actions during the cleansing of Arigata. The Emperor of Mankind, upon hearing of the Butcher's Nail surgeries, would command Primarch of the Space Wolves, Leman Russ, to confront Angron and demand the removal of the nails within the World Eaters. Resulting in a bloody confrontation between the 6th and 12th Legions, the stalemate would be ended with Russ giving the command to retreat from the engagement against his irredeemable brother. The Emperor would intervene personally and command Angron to travel to the northern fringes of the galaxy to combat the Xenos within. Though intended as a punishment, this action would allow the World Eaters to freely operate without the scrutiny of Imperial oversight. As such, the 12th Legion would not abandon their bloody practices or remove their implants. The Emperor would eventually recall the World Eaters to the human lines of the Great Crusade and order his favored son, Horus Lupercal, to oversee their conduct and mentor Angron in restraint. Yet with the corruption of the War Master by the ruinous powers, such a decision would prove to be a fatal error. Drawing his traitorous brethren to side against the Emperor, Horus Lupercal would have the least difficulty in convincing Angron. Already embittered to the Imperium and his Gene Father, Angron would be amongst the first to stand with the War Master. Purging the Legion of Loyalist elements during the Istvan Free atrocity, the World Eaters would serve as the single-minded berserkers of the traitor forces. Fearless in their slaughter of the Imperium, the World Eaters would further aid the traitor war effort during the Dropside Massacre of Istvan V, Shadow Crusade, and Siege of Terra. With each engagement led by their Primarch, the World Eaters would instill terror into the hearts and minds of humans and Astartes alike. Their relentless charges and savagery only bolstered with Angron's ascension to a demon prince of the ruinous powers. The World Eaters would seek to emulate their Gene Father as devoted servants of the blood god, Khorne. Instrumental during the Siege of Terra, the World Eaters would be the first to breach the defenses of the Imperial Palace. Yet despite their fury, the traitors would be driven from Holy Terra with the defeat of the War Master, Horus Lupercal. Retreating into the Eye of Terror, Angron would command his remaining forces to separate into small war bands as they fled. Lacking in supplies, reliable leadership, and badly scarred from the siege, many World Eaters would be driven mad by the fullest extent of the Butcher's Nails, such Astartes being culled from the Legion or crippled and interred within the chassis of dreadnoughts. The command structure of the World Eaters would collapse. During the Legion Wars, the 12th Legion would further deteriorate, fragmenting the Legion into smaller warbands which for 10 millennia still carve paths of slaughter across the expanse of space. Yet with the opening of the accursed Great Rift, the World Eaters have reformed into formations not seen since the Heresy. Commanded by both Kharn the Betrayer and the Demon Prince, Angron, the World Eaters have led blood crusades and invasions of Imperial strongholds throughout the galaxy. With Angron last seen during the invasion of the First War for Armageddon, the Khornite hosts strike suddenly and without relent across Imperial space. Despite Angron's banishment by the Grey Knights on the world of Armageddon, reports suggest his return to real space to be imminent. The Red Angel once more harrying the Imperium, only the most valiant and steadfast champions of humanity shall be able to face such a monolith of rage. The gene seed of the World Eaters is now mutated beyond all specifications outlined by the Imperium. Usable only to an extent by the Chaos Legion's Berserker surgeons, it is theorized by scholars of the Imperium that the World Eaters' gene seed had been corrupted from the Legion's inception, though others claim that the Warhounds were not damned from the start, and that their fall is solely the fault of their Primarch Angron and his Butcher's Nails. All that can be asserted truthfully is that the 12th Legion's genetic makeup resulted in a primal need for violence and aggression, their bloodlust not entirely dependent on their nail-induced rage. Collared by strict codified disciplinary actions and structures, the Warhounds would restrain their bloodlust with the tempered chains of their commanding officers. Ascending the ranks by virtue of their strength, the officers of the Warhounds would be relied upon to mete out punishments which as such require the capability to best their lower-ranked brethren. With no value given to deeds outside of the battlefield, the 12th Legion would be commanded by only the mightiest champions of their legion. Cowards would be slain by their brothers for their weakness, and worse would befall the Legion's foes. Surrender of any type would be met with extermination of captured combatants, yet the Legion would make a sport of sending their prisoners of war to the dueling pits to die a warrior's death. Settling disagreements within the Legion solely through trial by combat, promotions would even be achieved by lower-ranked Astartes by besting their superiors. Invariably, the loser of such duels would be slain. Masters of every variety of hand-to-hand weaponry, the Legion would become synonymous with one weapon above all, the chain axe. Following the example of their Primarch, the World Eaters would delight in their preferred weapon's ability to shred their enemies into fragments and adorn their armor in spattering patterns of blood. Such a reputation would be gained of the chain axe that its use would spread to other legions. Imbuing their weapons with significance only in their ability to kill, once a weapon would break under the stresses of war, it would be discarded. Regarded as wasteful by the other legions of Astartes, the World Eaters would see broken weapons as portents of ill omens and rarely name their weapons or take steps to maintain them. With fighting pits sanctioned within the Legion by Angron, rituals would form around the Astartes' rules of engagement, allowing for such challenges to change into blood rites with the Legion's corruption by the ruinous powers. These rituals would easily transition into blood sport worships to their patron god, Khorne. Each opponent slain, a pleasing tribute to the foul being, the Astartes of the 12th bask in the glory of their slaughter with unabashed joy and devotion. Favoring close quarters combat, the World Eaters would only grow more bloodthirsty and savage with their reunion with their Primarch and eventual descent into chaos. Seeing minimal changes in command structure with their transition from Warhounds to World Eaters, the Legion would be comprised of several chapters known as echelons. Bolstering their melee strategies with support elements such as Terminator squadrons and Landspeeders, the 12th Legion heavily relied on drop pod assaults aimed at the heart of enemy defenses. Ripping and tearing their enemies from within, the World Eaters would deploy with seeming disregard for their own mortality or self-preservation. Relying on their heavily armored transports, attrition would be the Legion's most practical and commonplace strategy. Though it is unknown to what extent the Legion's might was during the Great Crusade or Horus Heresy, estimates suggest the Legion's might to have peaked at 150,000 Astartes prior to the commencement of the atrocity of Istvan III, with their numbers plummeting to 75,000 following the Legion's betrayal of its loyalist kin. Offsetting their losses in both lives and materials with the age of Forge Worlds such as Sarum, most engagements would prevent the Astartes of the 12th Legion from achieving veterancy or battle-forged specialized formations. A notable exception being the Devourer bodyguards of the Primarch Angron, consisting of 12 battle-hardened and tested Astartes. Acceptance to join such a prestigious honor guard earned through ritual combat. The Butcher's Nails implants deteriorating the sanity and discipline of the Legion, the organized formations of the World Eaters would become impractical and superfluous. With even the Legion's Librarius disintegrating due to the Nails' incompatibility with the Psykers of the Legion, due to overpowering their surges of power or causing brain embolisms. Refusing to undergo the fatal procedure, the remaining Librarians of the Legion would be shunned by their battle brothers, but nonetheless still serve the Legion unfettered by the Emperor's decree of the Edict of Nicaea. The final remnants of the Legion's Librarians perishing in their attempt to prevent their Primarch from transforming into a demon prince of the ruinous powers. The remainder of the Legion's voluntary implantation of the Nails, bringing them closer to their Primarch as an act of sharing his burden. The Astartes would increase their pain tolerance and aggression in equal measure. Though each individual Space Marine would experience the Nails' effects to different degrees, all would nonetheless share their mutual self-destruction. Continuing this trend of continual decay, the Legion would not survive the Horus Heresy unscathed. Broken into independent warbands, the World Eaters operate under the command of their respective Chaos Lords. Such notable warbands including the Butcher Horde, Skull Takers, Gladiator Group 138, and the Gore Hunters. Due to the Legion's storied history of enormous fatalities, the World Eaters have always employed methods to keep recruitment a constant, no matter their fighting capabilities. Recruiting from huge varieties of worlds, World Eater Astartes are often drafted from feral and feudal worlds, with only the Ultramarines Legion comparable in their diversity of warriors spanning from many worlds of the galaxy. Prior to the Horus Heresy, Primarch Angron would donate his own genetic material to his Legion's apothecaries and personally screen aspirants of the Legion in order to streamline gene seed implantation and grafting of organs. Primarily trained on the muster world of Bot, World Eater recruits would undergo live fire exercises and training before being dispatched to the Legion's expedition fleets. Due to recruitment from disparate worlds, the Legion would devise a derivative second language of Gothic to facilitate communication within the Legion. Combining 36 native languages within the Legion's ranks, this so-called bastardized tongue would be widespread within the World Eaters and prove crucial to aid in commanding the ragtag warriors of the 12th. Collaborating with the Word Bearers Legion to engineer biovat-grown warriors, the apothecaries of the 12th Legion would create abominable warriors at a rapid pace. Creatures of pure rage, instilled with the perception of surviving endless wars, the surplus of warriors would prove useful with the Legion's commitment to the traitor war effort. However, with time and their defeat fighting the Loyalists of Terra, the World Eaters would struggle to replenish their numbers. Bot would be annihilated at the hands of Ironhand Ironfather, Ortek Moore, leading to World Eater Berserker Surgeons relying on transforming captured Loyalist Space Marines and Chaos Warband Astartes to replenish their losses. Though not all warbands of the World Eaters possess the knowledge or skill to replenish their casualties.
The Emperor needed a weapon that would never obey its own desires before those of the Imperium. He needed a weapon that would never bite the hand that feeds. The World Eaters were not that weapon. We've all drawn blades purely for the sake of shedding blood. And we've all felt the exaltation of winning a war that never even needed to happen. We are not the tame, reliable pets that the Emperor wanted. The wolves obey when we would not. The wolves can be trusted when we never could. They have discipline we lack, because their passions are not aflame with the butcher's nails buzzing in the back of their skulls. The wolves will always come to heel when called. In that regard, it is a mystery why they name themselves wolves. They are tame, collared by the Emperor, obeying his every whim. But a wolf doesn't behave that way, only a dog does. That is why we are the Eaters of Worlds and the Warhounds no longer.
This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. The 12th Legion's descent into slaughter demonstrates the weakness inherent in the flesh of even the Astartes, their minds beyond the salvation of anything but the embrace of a bolter shell. And so in our next transmission of the Legions of the Adeptus Astartes, we shall be elucidating the deeds of the cold, steel-hearted Iron Tenth, the Iron Hands.